we have a disaster that we've never seen before. We haven't ever seen a movie. We've seen movies about asteroids and we've seen movies, meteorites and those kind of things, but we've never seen the moon crashing to Earth.
An enormous asteroid has hit the moon and knocked it off its axis. And with every orbit, it's getting closer and closer to the Earth.
It sort of comes out of nowhere, hits the moon, throws the moon off course, and anomalies start happening on Earth. And the anomalies start getting worse and worse.
The whole story is about our characters, our heroes, trying to figure out how the heck did we stop the moon from crashing into Earth.
The moon is presently on a narrow elliptical orbit and has yet to reach its closest point on this orbital pass. When it moves on, we can expect a reprieve of sorts.
But in the meantime, we can expect another event.
Yes.
Worse?
Yes.
There was a lot of homework done by Michael because it's based on, granted, very unlikely, but somewhat feasible parameters that we used, that the what if factor came in, and that, yeah, you know, in a really stretched, coincidental kind of way, it could happen.
I actually found some physicists astrophysicists who came up with some theories as to how it would really happen. So we went through, and I say we, meaning the producers and I, went through great lengths to make sure that all of our science could be backed up.
I was up at the observatory a couple of weeks ago shooting a couple of the scenes, and I was talking to the astronomer that works there. There are so many near-Earth objects, possible asteroid hits. Basically what he was saying is that they do watch these things. They will know if something is going to hit. There is nothing at this point in time that's invented that could really stop something. And basically they would be able to tell us with you know, complete certainty when the world was going to come to an end.
Caused by the 40 megaton explosion hit the coast of Australia and Indonesia.
Alex Kittner is an astrophysicist who is retired and is teaching in Ottawa. He had worked with NASA for many years, but his wife got sick, and they moved back to Canada, and she died, and he has 2 children, so he's called out of retirement because of the situation that we're in. I'm gonna make you a deal, okay, pal? I will never leave without saying goodbye. Okay.
Should I make a wish to the man in the moon that everything will be okay?
I think that's a great idea.
Hello, this is Dr. Rhodes.
Dr. Rhodes, when the White House was briefed last week, we were told there wasn't any danger from this meteor shower.
Well, Maddie Rhodes is an incredible scholar, an astronomer who obviously very much loves her profession and is very, very invested, has just gotten an amazing job at a new observatory.
Visita mi canal.
You know, has been the kind of person who, when somebody oftentimes, not always, but when somebody gets to that level of expertise in their job, they've given up a lot on the way. And I think Maddie's no exception. I think she gave up her relationship in the past, even to Alex's character. I could use your help.
Well, what can I do?
Come to New Mexico, you know, look over the data, see if there's something we've missed.
I can't get away right now, Maddie. It's not a good time.
Just for a day.
Amanda died 8 months ago, and I can't be away from my kids, you know?
Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
No, hey, it's okay. You know, you could come here if you got the time.
As things start to unfold through this film, I think she really understands that none of it's really worth anything unless you have somebody to share it with, you know, that life doesn't matter as much. And
I'm sorry, but you know the situation.
Except there's always a situation, Roland. You missed our last meeting because you were hunting down another important meteorite.
That wasn't my fault.
We had to cancel the meeting with the caterer the week before that because you were skydiving.
Roland's a geologist, and he's specialized on, well, outer space matter, not just from the moon, obviously, you know. Well, he definitely loves what he does, very much so. And because of that, has become an expert in his field, and that's why he joins the task force. He has a girlfriend, and there are certain attachments and certain next steps which want to be taken. And it's kind of interesting to see these kind of normal people, which we all are, all the scientists at least, which then have to, well, live up to expectations and pressure. And we watch them, how they deal with it.
I was in New York, and I got a phone call that the timing was coming out short, and we needed to add a scene between Martina and Roland. And it was kind of suggested that if we could just come up with a conversation in a cafe. And I literally had to write this thing in an hour or 2 hours, whatever it was. I just whipped it out, and it might be my favorite scene in the movie, the two of them in a cafe.
I couldn't wait anyway.
Wait for what?
Well, I went to see.
Sorry, I just have to take this. Just 2 more seconds. I'll be right with you. Hello? Where? I'll be there in 10 minutes. Great. Bye. You are going to kill me, aren't you?
Yes.
If I'm the first to find a fragment from the meteor itself, believe me, that would be very good news.
There's nothing like sharing good news with the person you love, hmm?
We can read each other's thoughts.
Completely.
Alex, I'm not sure I'm up for this. I mean, I like my quiet. I'm kind of set in my ways.
Lloyd, you're the closest thing they have to their mother. I need your help.
All right, but I'm not taking them anywhere. They're gonna watch a lot of TV right here.
You got a lot of friends that are gonna help out, Lloyd. Just be a grandfather.
Lloyd is grandfather to these two little kids, and their father is my son-in-law. My daughter-in-law died fairly recently. It's sort of broken Lloyd's spirit. He's sort of sick at the way the world is going, so he's retreated to this house and doesn't want to leave it, and is left with the two children when the father has to go off to Washington to try to save the world.
As the project went from pre-production into production, some of our parts we knew we had cast, like David James Elliott was cast already. I thought that was very exciting. And then as prep went along, it slowly started to evolve. We got a new person came in and a new person came in. And so it became this nice little treasure box of actors that just made everybody exciting.
.233, take 2. Hey, marker.
Well, when I read a script first, I kind of I read it for the story, and I try to get as much caught up in the story as I can. I try not to put the director head on too quickly. I just want to read it and see what kind of response I have just as a regular person, right? But soon after that, you can't help but clicking into director mode. And obviously reading the script, I realized right off the top that the scope of this was going to be really big. And so what I liked about it the most was it had the size, it had the scope, it had the sci-fi, the action, but more importantly, it had the human element to it. In this story, the moon and crashing into the moon is the exciting part, but it's really just a catalyst to get into what the most interesting part of the movie is, and that's how it affects people. What if you knew that in 36 days you're going to die?
Mike's been very nice. I always appreciate it when directors allow me to fiddle with the dialogue, you know, and comfortable enough to make suggestions about how I see the scene from my particular vantage point. In terms of staging or where it goes.
It was such a big script. I mean, just when total scenes are up in the 380 range, that's a lot of work. And this one had so many sets that I was initially alarmed.
Tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
But as Mike and I discussed it and we broke it down to the essential bits, you know, we systematically figured out a way to do it. At what point in this sequence was it that you wanted to be into the real stuff, and how much of it is wide vis effects?
The first 4 panels are fake, and then we get to the last panel, and that's the lunar surface that we'll create in our gravel pit.
Okay, so you want us to do like this portion of it after the push in.
That's right.
It's into real. And then the canyon itself, I'm assuming that we'll build that on the stage and present the lander in its crashed attitude.
Yep.
In the stage as well.
Yep. The moon surface was definitely fun. It was up there because it was a challenge to try to make that as convincing as possible. So we went through our options, and you know, in this day and age, there's lots of options. You could shoot the whole thing virtually on a green screen, but for our particular project, we felt it was probably more in how we wanted to accomplish, better to go to try to get a real location. So, not the real moon, but we went to a gravel pit, which has been done before in some other movies. Mission to Mars did a gravel pit just outside of Vancouver, and it works quite well. So we searched around Victoria, and we found a couple of options, and we finally went to the Butler brothers, who have the best moon surface in town. So we took our crowd and went there, did a little bit of alteration to the surface just to take out some of the anomalies away. You have to be careful of the elements, like it couldn't rain, it wasn't allowed to rain. Footprints, we didn't want any Nike footprints in the moon surface. You know, with spacesuits, it's always sort of difficult to make sure they don't fog up. One night we had a little fog problem, so we dealt with that. Action. And the moon bats. Yeah, we had bats fly by once in a while, and birds. There was a goose on the hill on eggs, and we don't want to disturb Mummy when she's on her eggs, so we left her there. And her head turned every once in a while, but we're the only ones that are going to know.
Come over, look at this. Spacesuits. Well, the spacesuits are comprised of 3 main parts. There's pants, an upper hard shell torso, and a helmet. And we've got shoes and gloves to match. They're remote control. They've got fans for cooling. They're fairly comfortable for the actors. And they look like NASA space shuttle spacesuits with a little bit of our own interpretation. Got a remote control here, and this is a great time for the batteries to fail. Oh, there we go. The fans in the helmet for cooling, body fans. The intensity of the spotlights and the intensity of the face lights. We've got 2 modes, rolling which has more light and less fans for sound, and standby, which turns the fans up to keep the actors cool and turns the lights off to save batteries.
This is getting very heavy on my shoulders today. It's much worse than
much
before.
worse today, isn't it?
It is, really.
Because of the density of this brown dwarf lodged inside of the moon, its gravity has changed. So it's not, well, I don't know, it's not zero gravity, but it's not this kind of us bouncing around, because that would be, you know, kind of difficult. We have about double gravity of what the Earth has, so everything's just that much more difficult and heavy. So we're slowing down the movements. The spacesuit as such, as you can see, it's not exactly a ballet suit, so it has weight already in itself, so that helps.
No, I'm just tackling this uncomfortable suit. It's heavy, but it looks great.
Is there a fan inside there?
There's a little fan, yeah, in the chest. I think there may be one in the back. I don't know. I was told it was there, but I can't really feel it. But I can feel that one in the chest kind of, you know, helps to cool you off.
We had to invent technology and make it visual that is so recent, like this whole EM pulse generating things.
It's a zero gravity propulsion machine which manipulates electromagnetic energy. We'll just leave it at that for now.
I ended up just trying to figure out ways that actors could move things, putting giant coils that looked like the insides of electric motors onto moving parts, so that there was a lot of assemblage involved, because we needed the ticking clock of them working in a race against time.
Thank God we have, who knows, do we really have one of these? If not, we may need to invent one.
Somehow the collision has altered the moon's magnetic field.
But only in specific areas. Random, very isolated surges in the Earth's electromagnetic field. That would explain it.
But what about the tides? They've been affected too, and that's not magnetic, that's gravitational.
True. Which would suggest somehow the moon's mass has been dramatically altered.
There's a lot of scientific dialogue. There's some, but I have already committed that to memory. There's some challenges, not only to keep it interesting, but to, be effective with it.
There's no other way to learn lines like this other than actually absolutely understanding what you're saying. It's so hard to memorize lines when you don't have an attachment to them on some level. Relationships, scenes where something's happening that you can relate it to something, or it's the way that you speak, is one thing. But when you're talking about something that's completely out of your vocabulary, your sight, it's just not there, you have to learn about what you're talking about. And if you don't know what you're talking about, you can't memorize the lines.
First of all, you have to, you spend a lot of time on the computer, so that you understand exactly what you're talking about. It's always, it's great when you work on a piece, you always walk away having learned something new, and that was certainly the case here.
Some of the sequences that have been really fun to work on actually have anything to do with actors or even working on the set. That's been during our CGI discussions, because much of this movie, a lot of the scope of it and a lot of the big major events will happen in the virtual world. Some of it we're gathering elements for to contribute to the CGI, but a lot of them are just straight CGI shots. So being able to spritz on those things and talk to the CGI guys, come up with concepts, and try to work within our realm of possibility on the production was quite fun.
What we were doing there is we were actually doing a lot of the moon stuff, where we're creating the moon environment as a piece of computer graphics. So we're combining live action, which was the astronauts, with that CGI. And for example, in some of the other stuff we're doing, where we're combining CGI with live action. For example, we have a number of shots where we have people looking up at the sky, and of course they're just looking up at a normal empty sky, but we're going to put in CGI meteors that travel across the sky. So in that case, you can't put tracking marks in the sky. So how do we manage to do that? And the answer is we do it manually, where somebody actually will sit and go frame by frame and adjust where they feel the camera would be. And as long as we have certain information The most crucial information is the lens, the focal length of the lens, and the tilt, the angle of the camera. If we have that information in CGI land, we can absolutely replicate a virtual camera with the same lens that will allow us to map a virtual CGI landscape onto a plate that we've already shot.
Well, there's more, I don't know, more sense of depth of the whole thing. Already, you know, and I'm loving these other things in there. Right through in the back here. See, look, see that? That's,
there is stuff.
Yeah, but that's what we need, because that's what makes the movie real.
Great.
Yeah, great stuff.
The stuff that the actors have to interact with the most, you tend to try to make that environment as best you can as real for them as well as for our pictures, because we want to make it obviously as realistic as possible. So once you start getting close in around the actors and stuff like that in some of these sequences, it's best to try to make that environment as real as possible.
It's a tough call to know where to pitch a performance when you have nothing at all but this screen, you know. And it takes a good director to either lift a performance or keep a performance in balance with the rest of the performances.
I've done green screen work in the past, a lot of it, and if it's done well, it's fantastic. And you know, Mike, our director, seems to have a really nice grasp on the piece, and so it's being handled well.
I think maybe one thing that's interesting is obviously working with the writer who spent a long time writing the script. His journey on its own is a movie. Our producers have been really supportive as well, getting the elements we need and letting us have the size of movie that we're hoping to get. They've been like really supporting that, so I'm really grateful for that as well. And of course, you know, lots of directors say, you know, oh, they love the cast, this and that, but I gotta say I'm having a really great time on this one because everybody really wants to be here, and again, everybody brings their uniqueness to it, and it's very satisfying as a director to go, wow, look at these people work, and they're all pros, you know, and you just have to give a little guidance, you know, bring your ideas, and they just run with it, and that's very satisfying.